Imagine the dawn breaking over a city like Liverpool or Bristol in the year 1740. The air is thick with the smell of salt, tar, and damp stone. Cobbled streets, slick with morning mist, echo with the sounds of a city stirring to life. This is not just any city. This is an engine of empire, a vital organ in a new global body. Its lifeblood is the sea. Down at the docks, the forest of masts from tall wooden ships scrapes against a grey sky. These vessels are the key to everything. They are the tools of a new kind of commerce, one that will reshape continents and change the course of history for millions. The quayside is a hive of activity, a chaotic but purposeful dance. Sailors with weathered faces shout in a dozen languages, heaving ropes thick with hemp and stained by seawater. Carts pulled by sturdy horses clatter over the stones, their wheels groaning under the weight of barrels and crates. And everywhere, there are the merchants. Dressed in dark wool coats, they stand with an air of authority, their sharp eyes missing nothing. They are the architects of this wealth. In nearby counting houses, the clink of gold and silver coins is a constant rhythm, the soundtrack to a booming economy built on distant lands and risky voyages across the vast, unforgiving Atlantic. Behind the docks stand the great warehouses, vast brick cathedrals built to store the treasures of this new trade. Inside, the air is heavy with the sweet, cloying scent of raw sugar from Jamaica. The rich, earthy aroma of tobacco from Virginia hangs in the dust-filled sunbeams. And there are huge, tightly packed bales of cotton from the Americas, the raw material that will soon feed the roaring mills of the Industrial Revolution. These goods were once luxuries, exotic items for the very rich. But now, they are pouring into Europe in unprecedented quantities, transforming tastes, habits, and the very fabric of society. This entire scene, from the shipwrights hammering new hulls to the clerks scratching figures into leather-bound ledgers, is powered by a relentless ambition. It is a system designed to extract wealth from across the globe and concentrate it here, in the heart of Europe. The ships arriving are not just carrying cargo, they are carrying the profits of a complex and often brutal global network. And the ships leaving are not just setting sail, they are embarking on a journey that will connect 3 continents in a web of trade, exploitation, and immense, world-altering change. It was a system that promised riches, but its true cost was yet to be fully understood. To understand how this wealth was generated, we must look at a map. But this is not just a map of geography. It is a map of a system, a brutal and efficient triangle of trade that connected Europe, Africa, and the Americas. The first leg of the journey began here, in the European ports. Ships, newly built and freshly supplied, were loaded with manufactured goods. They carried iron bars, firearms, cheap textiles, and glass beads. These were not items of high value in Europe, but they would become currency on the coast of West Africa. The ships then sailed south, their captains and investors dreaming of the immense profits that lay ahead. The second leg of this triangular route was the most infamous. It was the Middle Passage. After arriving in West Africa, the European goods were traded. The cargo they were exchanged for was not sugar or tobacco, but human beings. Men, women, and children, captured and sold, were forced onto these same ships. The vessels were transformed into floating prisons, packed with hundreds of people in horrific, inhumane conditions for the long voyage across the Atlantic. This journey was one of unimaginable suffering, and many did not survive. For the merchants and ship owners, these people were not seen as human. They were commodities, a crucial link in the chain of profit that this entire system depended upon. The third and final leg of the triangle completed the circuit. Upon arrival in the Americas, in places like Barbados, Jamaica, or the colonies of North America, the enslaved Africans who had survived the Middle Passage were sold. They were sold at auction to the highest bidder, often on the very same docks where the ship's other cargo would be unloaded. The money from their sale was then used to buy the products of their forced labor: the sugar, the tobacco, the cotton, the coffee. These goods, now loaded into the holds where human beings had been imprisoned, were then shipped back to Europe, completing the triangle and generating enormous profits for the investors back home. This cycle was repeated over and over, a relentless engine of commerce that fueled Europe's economic growth. Each leg of the journey was designed for maximum profit. The ships were never empty. They carried goods from Europe to Africa, enslaved people from Africa to the Americas, and plantation crops from the Americas back to Europe. It was a system that intertwined the fates of 3 continents, creating immense wealth for a few, while inflicting unparalleled misery upon millions. The map shows us the routes, but it is the human story behind those lines that reveals the true nature of this global web of commerce. Back in Europe, a revolution of a different kind was taking place. It was a revolution of taste. The goods, arriving on the ships from the Americas, were changing the way ordinary people lived. Sugar, once a rare medicine or a spice for the wealthy, was becoming a daily staple. It was used to sweeten the bitter taste of 2 other new arrivals, coffee and tea. These new habits created a social ritual. The coffee house and the tea table became centers of social life, from the drawing rooms of the aristocracy to the parlors of the rising middle class. This desire for sweetness was more than a preference. It was becoming an addiction. This growing demand in Europe had a direct and powerful effect across the Atlantic. The more sugar Europeans consumed, the more sugar needed to be grown. The more tobacco they smoked, the more fields needed to be planted. This created a boom in the plantation economy. Vast tracts of land in the Caribbean and the American colonies were cleared to make way for massive, single-crop farms. These were not small family farms. They were industrial-scale agricultural enterprises, designed for one purpose only, to produce as much of a single cash crop as possible, as cheaply as possible, to satisfy the insatiable appetite of the European market. The plantation was a new kind of landscape, one engineered for profit. Forests were felled and ecosystems were destroyed to create endless fields of sugarcane or tobacco plants stretching as far as the eye could see. This system was incredibly profitable, but it was also incredibly demanding. It required a huge, constant, and controllable workforce to perform the back-breaking labor of planting, tending, and harvesting the crops, often in grueling tropical heat. The work was relentless, dangerous, and exhausting. The question for the plantation owners was simple: who would do this work? The answer to that question would have devastating consequences. The indigenous populations had been decimated by disease and violence. European indentured servants were too few in number and could eventually earn their freedom. The plantation owners looked for another source of labor, one that was permanent, hereditary, and stripped of all rights. They found their answer in the transatlantic slave trade. The demand for sugar in a London coffee shop directly fueled the demand for enslaved African labor on a plantation in Jamaica. The connection was direct, undeniable, and catastrophic. The sweetening of Europe came at the bitterest of human costs. The insatiable European demand for plantation goods fundamentally reshaped the world. It created a system where the need for labor was constant and ever-increasing. As more plantations were established to grow more sugar and cotton, more enslaved people were required to work them. This spiraled into the largest forced migration in human history. The transatlantic slave trade became a massive, highly organized industry. It was an industry that tore millions of people from their homes in Africa, destroying families, communities, and entire societies. The consequences of this forced depopulation are still felt on the African continent today. For the enslaved, life on the plantation was one of endless toil and systematic brutality. They were considered property, not people. Their labor, their bodies, and their children all belonged to the plantation owner. They worked from sunrise to sunset, 6 or 7 days a week, under the constant threat of the whip. The profits that flowed back to Europe, building the grand houses and funding the new industries, were extracted directly from their sweat, their suffering, and their shortened lives. This new global economy was not just built on trade, it was built on a foundation of human bondage. The legacy of this era is complex and deeply embedded in the modern world. The wealth generated by the slave trade and plantation economies fueled the Industrial Revolution in Europe, providing both the capital for investment and the raw materials like cotton for the new factories. Port cities like Glasgow, Liverpool, and Nantes grew rich from this trade. Banks, insurance companies, and dynasties were founded on its profits. The economic structures of our world today, the disparities in wealth between nations, are inextricably linked to this history. We live in a world that was shaped by the demand for sugar in a teacup. In conclusion, the story of 1700s European trade is not a simple tale of ships and merchants. It is the story of how a growing consumer appetite in one part of the world created a brutal system of production in another. The demand for luxury goods in Europe led directly to the explosion of the plantation system and, with it, the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade. It connected continents, created immense fortunes, and built empires. But it did so at an unimaginable human cost, remaking the globe in a way that left a legacy of inequality and injustice that continues to challenge us in the 21st century.